So excited everyone is here. Today is April 21st, 2021. And oh my goodness, the flood of clarity, the flood of peace, the flood of certainty. And I have to say, the flood of courage that is coming my way, and it's available to everybody, is absolutely indescribable. There is just so much going on right now that ha, the more I understand the truth of who we are, the more I understand why this is such a difficult thing for so many to participate in. Ah, so I want to start with a couple of quick announcements. So in the chat room, and I believe most of you have replied, but in the chat room, I am putting the link to the new group that I've created in Telegram, where I am going to be posting information for these conversations. And, you know, really the reason I'm doing that is twofold. One, because it's best if we're all communicating in one place, because it's a little bit of a challenge for me to post on Facebook, post in Telegram for some of you, text others, and it's a lot of work. And also, so that's the number one reason, just to make it a little bit easier for all of us to communicate in one place. And the other thing is, I am feeling very, very called to pretty much exit Facebook. I just cannot participate in anything that is censoring that which God created free. So I am going to, little by little, clean out my Facebook page, because those days of acquiring lots of people so more people could see your message, Facebook doesn't really do that. It doesn't share your message, especially if they tag you, as I have been tagged as one who shares truth. And those of us who share truth, Facebook does not want anybody to see what's on our pages. And I see that I post some things that are pretty deep, and unless somebody is saying, oh, I want to see what Laina is sharing today, it's not going to show up in your feed. It's just not going to. So why bother? So I am going to clean up my Facebook page, leave it strictly to the people that I actually know, or I'm in some kind of a dialogue with. And I'm going to use Facebook to post my fun things. I'll post pictures of my kids. I'm going to post the 3D stuff on there. And every now and again, if I feel inspired, I'll post some of my classes or teachings, because in the description of the class or the teaching or whatever, or when my book launch happens, there won't be anything controversial on that post, although the whole class and the whole book is about truth. But anyways, I'm going to use Facebook the way that they're showing me I need to be using them, which is 3D conversations. The 5D kind of conversation, I am waiting to see what happens with the platform, Frank Speech, which was just opened, but they're receiving so many challenges. They're under major attack, because they are going to be defending free speech, and that's the last thing that the controllers of the 3D world want us to experience, is a place where we can dialogue and feel normal with each other and not be attacked and bashed. And anyway, so you could kind of say we'll be preaching to the choir. However, the choir is on different levels, and the teachers, the preachers, we're on different levels of the journey. So each time one of us resonates with somebody, even though we're hearing things that either might be familiar or that we're accepting, the ability to not resist creates an opening for receiving. So let me say that again. Whenever we resist, we cannot receive. And all resistance is always to expansion. We don't resist going into descending into smaller places. Once you're a high level of consciousness, expanded level, and remember, it's not good or bad, higher or lower. It's not good or bad. It's just more, you just know more truth. That's all that it is. When you know more truth and you're being invited into a conversation that is more contracted, you can be there with compassion. You don't resist it. You acknowledge how it is, and you go, okay, that's just what's happening. because you recognize the holiness of each being that is sharing whatever conversation they might be sharing or whatever teachings they might be sharing. But we do need to begin to get clear that we are being, I'm going to call it divided. Not because there are any of us that are better or worse, any of us that are doing it right and some that are doing it wrong. That is not it. And our mind has to get clear about this, which is why today's lesson, we're going to talk about lesson 76. I am under no laws but God's. I want everybody who has made a commitment to be under no laws but God's to have two things. One, to really understand it, and two, to have an experience of like-minded, like consciousness supporters that cheer us on when we attempt to embody these truths. When we embody these truths in the 3D world, we are judged, we are chastised, we're called crazy, insane, conspiracy theorists. It's time for us to not be listening to that kind of a message because, frankly, at some point, there comes a day in your journey that you have to practice defenselessness. You don't need to defend your truth to anybody else. It's not necessary. When you know it, you embody it, you are not out there attempting to convert somebody else. Because when you live by your truth, you know everybody else, just like you, is a divine soul choosing to be in a state of forgetfulness. It is not our job to wake up those who want to be asleep. It is our duty to teach, share, express truths for those who want to wake up. Very, very different. I saw a post the other day that says it all. It was an image of a tiger. No, not a tiger, a lion. And the caption on the meme was basically, stop waking up the sheep, wake up the lions. And the lions is the symbolism of basically those strong, powerful, courageous beings who want to move out of the sleep state. Well, we have got to understand that the sleep state was a choice that we made from the highest levels of consciousness. It is not possible to enter into this planet and take on a physical vessel and choose the game of separation if you're not a soul that is connected to God, that is one with God first and foremost, because God is the creator of all things. We are the ones who have made the experience of separation our perceived reality, but we did not make this world. We didn't create this world by ourselves. We created our ability to pretend that this world is not of God. We created the illusion, we created the veil, we blinded ourselves from the truth, which means the truth has to be there before we can blind ourselves from it. This is why, think about it when you put on sunglasses and you obscure your ability to see what is out there. That means the light has to be out there before you can obscure it. So putting on the sunglasses is a choice to put on the veil, which means that the light of truth, the light of God, has always been there. So to enter into the planet and put on the sunglasses, to put the curtain before our eyes, is a choice made by a powerful creator, the essence of God itself, choosing to play the game of hide and seek. We go into hiding by choice. We hide, we veil the truth by choice. So I am going to invite everybody who's on this call to really get honest with yourselves, with ourselves. Me too. I've had to do this many times and continue to do so. There is absolutely nobody on this planet that needs saving. There is absolutely nobody on this planet that does not have access to the same truths that each and every one of us does. There is absolutely no living being on this planet. And that means everything on this planet, because everything is alive with energy. There is nothing on this plane, this planet, that is not God expressing itself in the form of one who forgot. Now that applies really to the humans. Everything else that is living on this planet, which is everything else, knows what it is. The rock knows that it is the energy of God expressing as a rock. The leaf knows that. The tigers know that. The moon knows that. The stars know that. The rain knows that. We humans are the only ones who can choose to create a veil of forgetfulness. We do that because we like to play the game of hide and seek. We like to descend into the density of the egoic mind. And for those of us who can't see that really well because it's not easy to see, tell me, can you see that image right there on the board? Is everybody seeing that?
Yes, that's awesome.
Okay,
Big.
so excellent. I want to make sure I put that on there. So
Yes.
wonderful. So for those of you, let me just remove that. Now you can see everything on the board. Okay, so for those of you who understand, from pure consciousness, we chose to descend. Every baby is the presence of love itself, choosing to descend. I went ahead and put here on the screen, and I don't know if you guys can see that. I chose to put in some little people, and I will do this. I'll show it to you in a little bit more clearly. Let me see if I can get all my little people, giving them a job to do. Actually, takes a little longer than that. Okay, I'll show you that in a second. So we choose from pure consciousness, we choose to descend and play the game of hide and seek. We choose to enter into the illusion of separation. If you want to take a picture of this with your camera, go ahead and do so, because I'm going to take that off. And that way you can have something that allows you to see this more clearly. But I'm going to go ahead and stop that share in a second, because I want you to see what I did on the board. So let me go ahead and stop that. I can add it on later on. So anyways, I don't know if you can see what I did here. We come in the yellow. We come in our true essence, our light. We embody the truth of who we are. That's why everybody loves to hold a baby, because babies are the presence of God itself. We little by little descend. We begin to get indoctrinated into thinking we're bodies, we're separate, that bodies is just what we are. We have a body, but we need to learn that the body is a vessel to express the divinity of who we are. But from the time that we're itty bitty with unconscious parents, we are taught that we're separate from our parents, that we are our body, that we need to do certain things with our body, that we need to be, that approval comes from external authority. So we go through a process of indoctrination. And as we move through the different levels of stages of development in childhood, we definitely, our mind gets programmed into density, into believing that we are what we're not. So little children for a long time maintain a level of half knowing their divinity, half getting indoctrinated into their humanity. And eventually we think we're just humans. The shift happens, and then we descend into the darkness of the egoic mind. So it is really, really important that we begin to see every being as a holy, powerful being. If we don't see them as that, we are going to feel sorry for them. We are going to think they need our help, which makes us, it makes our ego superior. We are going to believe that we know what's best for them, which says that you are an idiot. You're stupid. You don't know what you're doing. Those are conversations that the 3D world has. If we're moving into a higher consciousness, you've got to see that for others. If you don't see that as the truth of others, you're not going to feel it as the truth of who you are. You see, in this game of awakening, this is the distinction between being aware and awake. Aware, you have divinity and in your humanity. That's what we have all been learning on the spiritual journey, that there's two parts to us, two voices, as the Course in Miracles teaches. Most people, the Course is very clear, most people are going to remain in a state of I'm going to say, misinformation. no matter how much true information they seek to acquire, they seek to connect with, because we have to transcend the ego mind. And the ego mind is a block to knowing the truth and embodying at all times. So, whenever we give ourselves permission to make the world real, we are in that moment saying, I'm not owning that what I am is divine. And most of us are going to live in that space of the world is going to still have a lot of power. There are a few things that the world still has power, and I recognize it, and I've got to correct my mind, shift myself out of that, because whenever we give permission to for our worries or our concerns or our fears or our doubts or our confusion to have permission to be true, we are denying the truth that says that the answers, the solution, the our entitlement to the miracle is equally as true, not maybe more true. You know, when we begin to acknowledge the truth that we deserve to have the answer, and we want it as soon as it's appropriate for us to receive it, not demanding give it to me now, but rather trusting that it is going to arrive at the right and perfect time, your mind can be at ease and at peace with whatever is. So, understanding the laws of God are important, because if you don't know them with clarity, you cannot embody them as your true personality, your true essence. And becoming awake is a journey in and of itself. That's a totally different journey than the journey of self-awareness. And at some point, when you begin to experience the ego death, you begin to know, and really the way you know that you're there is you no longer need to be so righteous. That's a hallmark of entering into the awakened state. And the awakened state is a journey in and of itself. So it takes a while, baby steps. But when you're okay not being righteous, which means you don't know what's best for anybody else, you don't even know what's best for you. When we begin to stop this egoic need for righteousness, then the laws of God begin to make more sense, because we begin to experience them as of the truth of who we are. So, all right, let me mute a couple of, so we don't have any background noise. Okay, so again, in the people diagram, I wanted to make sure that you see that it is a journey. We descend from the higher colors of light, from the higher frequencies of light. We descend, we descend. Actually, I'm being a little too generous here. We descend into darkness much sooner than that. It's when we're doing the work here is when we begin to shift from the density of the ego to the lightness of the soul. So anyhow, that visual, I want you to remember that it's a progression until we get to the point that we descend into the darkness, the darkest dark, which is the little red people, which not too many people, by the way, go that low. That's why, we talk about the 1%. It's really the 1% of the 1%. Very few descend into that level of evilness, which is why we have got to understand the truth of what's going on. Because when we accept that there's way more of us at higher levels of consciousness, albeit most are inside of the egoic control, it is still a much larger number that when we begin to activate our voices, we begin to push back against those who are the very, 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 very few that are attempting to control things. The government is a perfect example of what we really have got to get clear about. And please don't try to correct my numbers, because the numbers don't really matter, even if they're a little bit inaccurate. What matters is the magnitude of the discrepancy in who really has power and who's been conditioned to believe that they have no power. So if you look at the US government alone, between the Senate and the House, and like I said, don't correct my numbers, just go with the average, there is roughly 500 to 600 people that are running this country. If you add the 50 states, the governors, and let's say we got 700 people, for even numbers, let's say we have 1,000 people, including the Supreme Court and a few of those higher positions that get to make laws and decisions for all of us. Let's say we have 1,000 people in this country that are deciding what happens for the rest of us. You know how many the rest of us is? Close to 300 million. 300 million people are bowing down to 1,000 people. Now, not quite true, because half of those, maybe not quite half, close to that, are waking up and are realizing, maybe more than that, are realizing that we don't want 1,000 people telling the rest of us what to do, when, especially when we're connecting to God. And that is something that is really important that we understand, because each one of us that knows the truth is the equivalent. I received this through channeled information, is the equivalent. One of us is the equivalent to 1,000,000 in strength. So when 1,000,000 of us wake up, that, you know how that's a lot of us, 100 million of us in power and strength. So we have got to recognize that we have a lot more power, and that comes through understanding the laws of God. So one more thing I want to do before we go into our conversation today is, let's remember that our brother Vern either was in surgery this morning or might be in surgery right now. So let's hold him in the light of the truth that healing is done the minute one of us accepts it. The minute we choose to say, yes, Father, Mother, God, I receive the truth of my well-being. Course in Miracles says that healing is accomplished the minute we let go of suffering, the minute we let go of the idea that we're separate bodies that can get sick, separate bodies that can have problems with it, that can age and become broken or damaged or not working properly. The minute, with 100% certainty, we accept the truth of who we are, healing is accomplished. So let us all hold that as the truth for our brother. And if there's anybody here who wants to be held in that truth, if you let me know, you can just use your reactions and and put a little heart on there. Let me know, so that way we can all look on the screen, and anybody who needs the certainty of that truth, put a heart on the screen, and we will hold you in our consciousness, because we are each divine beings that can be found where it says reactions. So holding that, you can't find it, but we'll hold you, Kat. We'll hold you there, Kat.
Good.
Sometimes you got to play with that too, to find it. All right, my beautiful friends, let's get into this conversation. And again, I posted at the very top of the chat group the link to join us in the Telegram chat group, where I am going to be putting information. First, you have to be a member of Telegram. You got to sign up for that, and then you've got to send me a message to be my contact, or you click that link and you'll go directly there, and you bypass the middle woman. All right, so let's go directly to what the Course in Miracles wants us to understand about the laws of God. And I'm going to go ahead and read this. There's no way we're going to get through the whole lesson. It's a pretty long one. It's 2 pages and a little bit. But the information that A Course in Miracles offers us is so rich that sometimes it's very challenging to get past a couple of sentences to do them justice in the space of an hour. All right, lesson 76. This is inside of the workbook for students. So it's the second part of the Course in Miracles. So somewhere in the middle, page 134, you will find lesson 76. And if somebody can type that into the chat box, that way anybody else who joins us later will be able to see exactly where we are. Lesson 76. I am under no laws but God's. We have observed before how many senseless things have seemed to you to be salvation. Yes, we certainly have been deluded into believing things that are absolutely senseless. Each has imprisoned you with laws as senseless as itself. Let's talk about some of the laws for salvation that humans have made up. And by the way, the laws of God apply the same to all humans. The laws of the ego hold this whole idea of specialness, the idea that some are special and deserve it and some are not special unless they do certain things to get it. So to look at this and really understand the insanity that we have been living with from a very, very long time, from the beginning of organized religions, and in that you could say even organized belief systems, because you can go back to the Greeks that didn't have per se an organized religion to begin with, but began to assign to the different um, natural entities like the sun or the moon, began to assign to them godlike powers. And if there was, a thunderstorm, then the sky was angry at the people. So humans began to create this idea of something outside of us can punish us. And then you take that and you put it into an organized religion like Judaism or Catholicism, Christianity. You begin to see how little by little by little, over the course of the creation of those organizations, the need to control and make it more difficult for the human to experience salvation becomes. We get these stories that we've got to have a Messiah to save us. We've got to have something external to save us. And these ideas that something external is the source of our salvation would be all well and good. But then, like, I'll speak more to Catholicism because that's what I grew up with. Then they throw in a monkey wrench. Not only do I need to be saved to experience, the love of God and the forgiveness of God, or be saved, whatever. Then they throw in this monkey wrench that I'm a sinner. So I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I'm a sinner and there's something wrong with me, well, how can Jesus or God forgive me? So that stays in the mind. That conflict remains in the mind, that Jesus died for all of our sins and we are free. But wait a minute, I'm a sinner, and now I got to keep repenting. I got to keep asking for forgiveness, and then you add that you got to go through the church to experience this. That now you got to go through the middle person to get to that salvation, and then you add that you got to pay for this salvation, which is why Martin Luther left the church. The Lutheran church was Martin Luther said, no, we are not going to be charging people, because the kings and the queens, they could pay a lot of money for their salvation, but the paupers, they couldn't. So these poor people lived with this guilt, this insane density. They lived under the belief that they were less than how God created them, and even in the Bible, the holy text in the Old Testament, it says that when God created everything, it said it was good. So are we good or are we sinful? When you begin to see the contradiction, are we good, which means that we are made in the image of God, so we are imagined by God to be as God, which means we are light? Or are we these wretched, sinful people that humans have decided we got to work our way, through forgiveness to get to God, and Jesus did it for us, but wait, that doesn't count because you're sinful? Those kinds of crazy, confusing statements that we have received have polluted our minds in such a way that we don't even know what the truth is. That's why this journey takes so long. And this journey is speeding up for those who have agreed before we incarnated that in this lifetime we were going to divide into those who know the truth, are under no laws but God's, and those who are operating inside of human laws. The line was drawn. I'm going to put it right here. The line was drawn before we incarnated. And that means that we have to see every single being as a powerful creator whose mind was polluted with all kinds of beliefs, including church beliefs that said that their salvation to arise, that they've got to do certain things to get there, and that chances are they won't, because they're not the Pope, they're not the priest, they're not the whatever. So those who agree to cross that line before we incarnated are going to go through a process of what I'm going to call, this is the process of self-awareness before they get to awaken. And this is the journey of ascension. So we have to understand that under God's laws, we're all choosing to be here at whatever level we incarnated at. That same law of God says that all of us can wake up whenever we want to, but we have to become self aware usually first. I don't know if of people that I know or that I've read about that had an instant awakening and kept it. I know many, like me, had an instant moment of recognition, and then we drop into the egoic world and have to undo the beliefs by becoming self-aware and then choosing to remain to hold our truth. So it is so important for us that that's fine. Yes, you know, of course your ego wants to shut down Jody, the Christianity story, but it's everywhere. All even in Judaism that you grow up in, you cannot even say the word of God because there's a deliberate teaching that you're supposed to be separate from. So take what is shared here as you know, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. The indoctrination of the laws that are unlike God's not only happened within religion, they happened within government. Government tells us who's the king, who's the common person, who's the president, who's everybody else that has to, vote for them or that are the common people. We hear about who's the dictator and who's everybody else who's controlled. The process of removing us from our salvation, and salvation, the Course in Miracles wants us to understand, is nothing more than being saved by the truth of who we are. That's all salvation is. So if you can't find your truth inside of the Christian example, find it inside of the government example, find it inside of the family example. Father knows best. Well, that's part of the confusion, that the adults know more than the children. So use your own imagination to allow yourself to find whatever avenue works for you. Because every single time that we allow our ego mind to resist truth, this is what we're doing. We're saying, this is where I am, and this is my truth. All resistance, nobody resists that's up here. All resist, I mean, that's freedom. Why would you resist? All resistance is when the ego's talking. And when we're self-aware and we're not holding our truth, we get pulled into the ego. And of course, then it tries to tempt us with the resistance of truth so that it can have power over us. So let me keep reading here. So each of these laws, human-made laws, has imprisoned you with laws as senseless as itself. Again, if God created us in its image, isn't it senseless to believe human laws that say that we're not as God created us? You are not bound by them, these human laws. Yet, to understand that this is so, you must first realize salvation lies not there. Our salvation is not in the world. It is not in the world. We have had teachers who have come into the world, into the 3D world. Many have incarnated. Many are waking up in the 3D world and are sharing what we discover. Course in Miracles is truth that came into the 3D world, channeled by a person who was very much in her density, in her egoic density, and said it. You can watch interviews with Helen Schuckman, and she would say, I know this is true, but I don't believe it. Listen to the insanity of that. I know it's true, but I don't believe it. My ego won't let me believe this truth, so I'm going to resist living by it, but I know it's true. So many have come in to show us the way, but you can't find the truth if you look for it inside of the rules of the world. You have to find them inside of the teachings that are otherworldly, that resonate with a high frequency of love. So the first thing is we have to train our minds to stop looking for the truth here, but become self-aware enough that the truth is felt inside. Lots of teachers point at it. Lots of teachers give us books, teachings. Lao Tzu gave them to us, 2,500 years ago, more than that. Buddha gave us teachings, Confucius, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr. We have lots who have been giving us these truths, but they are only truths if we feel them inside so that they activate the God inside. Because that's what happens is the God inside begins to awaken. And that's when you have an aha, It's not because you heard something new, it's because you remember something true in here, inside of you. So then we go on to read. Now we're in sentence number 5. While you would seek for it in things that have no meaning, you bind yourself to laws that make no sense. Thus do you seek to prove salvation is where it is not. Let's talk about that. Laws that make no sense. When we're looking for the Supreme Court to honor what is true, and let's just work with, I don't expect the Supreme Court to live by God's laws, but I expect the Supreme Court to uphold the constitutional law, to uphold what this country was founded on, because I absolutely believe, when I read the Declaration of Independence, when I read our Bill of Rights, when I read those documents that our founding fathers wrote, I feel truth in there. To me, some of those things were channeled. Without a doubt, they were channeled, and you can feel it. Depending on where you are in your journey, you can feel truth. Here you might feel a little less of truth. Here you might feel more of it. Here you might feel all that is true within anything that you read. So to whatever degree you accept some truth, when many Americans read the Constitution, there is something inherently true about that we are all endowed by God with the same inalienable rights to life, liberty, and happiness. When that truth resonates with our being, why do we accept some group of people wearing black dresses, sitting in a court somewhere, appointed by somebody that may not even be who we voted for, which means that they're not necessarily a representative of what we believe is somebody in integrity with what we know to be true, makes a decision that causes any one of our brothers and sisters to lose their life, liberty, or their ability to pursue happiness. Why do we put up with that? Because our minds have been confused, because we're used to looking for truth where truth cannot be found by those who block it. Somebody who is blocking truth cannot honor truth. This is why in this country we have a justice system. You come down from the Supreme Court for some of the bigger things, and you come into the justice system that is so infiltrated with corruption that giving a person who should be innocent until proven guilty the ability to completely be heard, to have their day in court in a swift and appropriate and honorable manner to a child of God, to be given the opportunity to fully, without it being an issue about money, express their truth, bring forth those who can speak for them on their behalf of the truth, that so many of these innocent people are the ones who get convicted. We should all be in an uproar, but we're not in an uproar because we have been desensitized to the truth, and we have been taught to segregate into little groups based on the beliefs that we hold. We teach about not desegregation. Martin Luther King Jr., my gosh, he's totally one of my heroes, one of the people that I would love to sit down for dinner with among another group of courageous people who stood for truth. When we stand for the truth, we cannot sit back in our comfortable little homes and not do something about it, not speak, not call, not text, not write, not vote, not do something, because that is what we're breaking through. Is we're breaking through this insane limitation that is controlled by very few for the many. And the enslavement that we're under is only because we don't know the truth of who we are. If we know the laws of God, we don't fall for the illusion that man has created. So let me keep reading what is here. So in paragraph number 2, and this is beautiful, I love this. Today, we will be glad that you cannot prove it. We cannot prove that salvation is here. There's no way to prove salvation can be found in man-made laws. Be glad, because we'll just be a dog chasing our tail. For if you could, you would forever seek salvation where it is not. and never find it. This is why you cannot find truly your inner peace through by paying your 10% to the church. You can't find it there. You can't find it by paying your taxes. You can't find your peace by following human laws. The idea for today, that I am under no laws but God's, tells you once again how simple is salvation. Just follow God's laws. That's it. If we all follow God's laws, we're all out of the mess that the ego mind has created. We all ascend into self-awareness because we would be aware of the laws that are true and resonate with every one of us. See, that's the beautiful thing about God's laws and truths, is that they're the same for everybody. That's why storms rain on the rich, the poor, the black, the white, the straight, the trans, equally. It makes no exceptions. Only human laws like to make exceptions, to, frankly, to keep us divided. So here we go. So truth is simple. Look for it where it waits for you, and there it will be found. Look nowhere else, for it is nowhere else. Truth, I'm going to symbolize it with yellow, is of God. It is here. But if it is to be found in this crazy world, we've got to go seek it from those who are pointing the way to the truth that is inside of us. That is what then resonates with us and shifts us from blue to green. Not literally, but in my little people here, it shifts us from unawareness to curiosity, so that we can begin the process of unraveling our mind from the insanity that the ego has created. Paragraph 3 says, think of the freedom in the recognition that you are not bound by all the strange and twisted laws that you have set up to save you. You really think that you would starve unless you have stacks of green paper strips, money, and piles of metal discs, coins? Let me read that again. You really think that you would starve unless you had stacks of money? You really think a small round pellet or some fluid pushed into your veins through a sharpened needle will ward off disease and death? Well, let me read what that means. The small round pellet are pills, and the fluid pushed into your veins through a sharpened needle, vaccines, shots of medicine. You really think you are alone unless another body is with you? How many of us fear, oh no, if I don't have a partner, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, because we don't know God is inside of us. And what better partnership than an awareness of the creative source of all that is with you? And to add to that, your recognition when you are awake that we're all one. I mean, it's amazing. So let's spend a little time in here. I want us to really think, because for me to wake up from this idea, what? I wouldn't starve unless I had money? If I walked into Publix and I said, I'm a divine child of God, I live under no laws of God, I'm going to just take what I want and I'm not going to pay you, they would first say, okay, crazy lady, let's get you out of here. Call the police. Immediately, they would be on me if I claimed God's laws inside of an institution that we have been trained is where we go to exchange what God created freely. Those trees, are those trees being paid for the fruits that they produce? Who created those trees to produce fruit for us? So what God produces for free, we are told that we have to pay for. Well, and then we rationalize, well, it's because the middle people, the pickers of the fruit, have to get paid. The packaging people have to get paid. The transportation people have to get paid. The grocery store has to get paid. The marketing department that makes it all sound so yummy and wonderful has to get paid. Everybody has to get paid. And you're the one who pays it. So we have been indoctrinated into believing that what God has created for each of us to be sustained, we've created this system of exchange that over time has devolved into a very oppressive system. Because you see, exchanging, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what bartering is all about. I've got more milk, you've got, more eggs. I'll share the milk from my cow, you share the eggs from your chicken. It's a beautiful, wonderful exchange. Everybody eats, everybody's happy. But over time, what was a simple process created by divine beings operating at a beautiful frequency of an awareness of our divinity, our awareness of our humanity, pretty balanced, has devolved into those who enter into the realms of greediness, begin to use what was so beautiful and so just so beautiful in a graceful exchange where we all got to help one another. No one was better than and worse than the other. Some could have been white, some could have been black, some were farmers, some were moms, some were, the shopkeeper that made the bread, in a system where we were all doing what felt natural, and we traded, we exchanged, we took care of one another. Truly, that to me was the original gift economy, where we gifted to one another what we had in excess. We operated like the lilies of the valley, knowing that we were taken care of. But our mind has been trained out of that, because those who saw that there was an opportunity to profit, this is where the ego comes in. This is why the Bible in the Old Testament, Jody, this is not just Christian. This is in the Jewish teachings. It states very clearly, you cannot worship two masters. You will either worship God or you will worship money. It's very clear. Thousands of years we have known that. And when we begin to see, I can make a little profit if I start charging people for the transaction. Let me be the middle person. You got eggs, you got milk. All right, you each give me $10 or $5, whatever, a percentage, and I'll be the middle person. Well, our mind has been conditioned into believing that this is acceptable. And frankly, I don't mind paying the middle person. But here's where the story really gets ugly. And we have got to understand this. And I share this from a place of truly acknowledging I participated in this game, and I played it really well. I was as greedy as everybody else. And I have had to atone for my sins, my mistakes, my greed, how it affected other people. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I didn't care. I didn't care if you didn't get the promotion. So what if you needed the money too? If I could get the promotion, then I would do what I needed to do to climb that ladder, because we're all programmed into that our self-worth and our net worth are combined. And until we begin to pull that apart and see that we're not how much we have, we are what God has placed in us to give, to share, because giving and receiving are one. Until you know your worth, you operate with a sense of lack that makes us quite greedy. And those who understand that the mind is programmed that way, ego mind, have taken advantage of that for a very long time. So the laws of man are that we have to work hard for our money, that we've got to go out there and give 40 hours of our week. Oh, wait, that's not enough. An hour of commute each way. So, you add to that 56 hours of our week. Oh, wait, you can't just work 40 hours a week, especially if you're salaried. You work 50 hours a week, because you got to take this work home with you. You got to worry about it. You got to plan. You got to prepare. So we roughly are all very comfortable, trained into giving up 70 hours of our week to earn money. And when we do all of those things and we have money, then we can participate in the game of getting fed. So the course is wanting us to understand, not to judge the rules that man has made, but to wake up from the bondage of the rules that man has made, because it's only made in opposition to what God created, which is the law of sharing. We are one. We are brothers and sisters. Nobody should go hungry when businesses throw out food because somebody didn't pay for it. When we begin to recognize the insanity of that, the craziness of these rules and laws, we begin to want to do things differently. Ask God, what would you have me do? This is where food banks get created. This is where organizations will go pick up the leftover foods in places and go donate it and take them to those in need. This is where these things get created so that there's some solution. This is where beautiful beings who are operating at a higher consciousness come into the insane world and are the helpers, are the ones who are uplifting as much as possible. Let me read the second part of that. We talked about the food. These are the twisted laws. So let me think about this. Read this part again. Paragraph 3. Think of the freedom in the recognition that you're not bound by all the strange and twisted laws that you have set up to save you. We can grow our own food. We can be in cooperatives with other people who grow food and exchange our money without a middle person. We could do that if we wanted to. But do you realize that all over this country, there are laws that have been created against that, that make it illegal to share food with others? Oh, they're not sanitized. They're not following proper, sanitary stuff. I grew up on a farm. My grandparents had farms. I used to drink milk right out of the udder of the cow. We literally would get under the cow and we would squeeze the milk. That didn't kill me. But today, you can't have milk that comes right out of the cow. That would be unsanitary. It has to go through a process that is has to be observed by somebody who has to get paid and who has to be in an association, in a federation, be a member of the, I forget what all those terms are, milk purification association. So there's so many levels that add to the insanity, which is why it's so difficult waking up, because we have family members, we have neighbors that are part of all these associations, and they seem like they're doing something good. But they add to the insanity of the twisted laws. Again, these words are really amazing. Strange and twisted laws that you have set up to save you. Now, I'm going to get to the second part of that particular paragraph because I want to tie the milk story to what we're going to talk about next, so you can see how twisted these laws are. All right, so this sentence number 2 says, you really think that you would starve unless you have stacks? Oh, I already read that. So sentence 3, you really think that a round pellet, a pill, or some fluid pushed into your veins through a sharpened needle, a vaccine, will ward off disease and death? You really think that you are alone unless another body is with you? All right. Our minds have been conditioned to believe that we need something external to heal us. So from when time began, our body has an intelligence that bodies make themselves. Yeah, there are people using test tubes to try to grow bodies, but they can't really grow bodies or body parts without having initially some piece of body, some aspect of the human body to grow from. So nobody can create life, human life itself. Nobody can do that. Our bodies have an innate intelligence that we have been systematically, little by little, been talked out of remembering. We have put on the veil of illusion. We have put on those darkened glasses that keep us from accepting the truth of who we are. And over time, when we experience illnesses, we would go to natural medicines. We would go the homeopathic way. We would go the way of prayer. We would go the way of recognizing the shaman in the village who could assist us, because they understood that every illness was directly correlated to a state of consciousness. You cannot get sick unless your consciousness is sick first. You cannot descend into a physical disability if your mind is not disabled first. So as our minds have been systematically disabled, and by that I mean we don't have the ability to connect to the truth because there have been viruses implanted into our minds that block us from accessing the truth. It's like when you go on the internet, you go to Google and you're searching for something and there's a million answers. Well, we've been conditioned to only look at 1, 2, or 3, maybe the first page. So you might look at 5, 6, 7, 8. But what if the real truth is 80 pages down? Well, our mind has been conditioned to have it right now, quick. We have no patience. So because we accept the first thing that comes up, we've been trained into settling for what we are given, not really necessarily questioning it. So when you begin to research, again, you've got to become self-aware. And self-aware is not just aware of yourself, but aware of all the selves that made up these laws. And you begin to look at the insanity that the world has created from a different perspective. And we begin to see how the medical world has its history. You can trace it right back to the time when it shifted from natural remedies, natural cures, into synthetic cures, into man made cures, into cures that were profitable. And from that moment forward, and it really hasn't been but in the last 100 years, these pharmaceutical companies, these medical institutions, these I'm going to call them medical universities, is a vicious circle where the one funds the other. And when somebody wants to, in their heart, because they feel the calling to help others heal, enters into this loop, they are being fed information that only comes from that very close minded loop. And when you believe that you just got your degree from, XYZ Ivy League school and you're a medical doctor from that institution, and you were taught that this is the thing that helps you and you don't question it, you're not part of the clinical trials, you're not part of the observing how that has affected other people, didn't affect you, didn't affect your family. But all the documents tell you, well, there's, it works for a big group, but there's a little bit of few people who might get hurt. Because we have been conditioned to believe that it's okay to hurt a few people as long as the many get better. We have bought into what Jesus is saying right here. You really think a round pellet or some fluid pushed into your veins through a sharpened needle will ward off disease and death? So we have been conditioned to believe that those external things, those authorities out there, no different than religion, no different than the government, no different than the school system, have power over us. But it starts by conditioning the mind to become powerless. The mind becomes a servant. It gets pushed down. Your ability to rationally think, to critically think, you begin to suppress that ability because the mind gets filled with information that we have to regurgitate, not to experience its efficacy, but rather to accept it as truth that we do not question. So when the mind gets conditioned with that, then we do what we're told. So let me tie this back to the food industry so that you can see that it's all the same. Oh, let me do one more. Let's do the last sentence. The last sentence. So you really think that you are alone unless another body is with you. Our mind, we have been taught that you are a separate body and you're all by yourself. And well, until you meet your mate, you're not complete. And we made fun of the people who by a certain age, were not already married. If your aunt or uncle wasn't married by the age of, 18, 19, 20, there was something wrong with them. That was shame to the families that somebody didn't have a partner. That's why in so many cultures they do, I forget the term, somebody will type it in here for me, but you're matched. You are, your family finds somebody for you because you can't be alone. And you can't be alone because you need this other person. You need somebody else to complete you. One of the big lies that we're told, because we're not taught to be in alignment and connection with God, with source within. So we are conditioned to seek outside for those who complete us. And then there's two of us now who can work together and make more money, and inside of the insanity of the illusion of we're not complete, our bodies get sick. Well, then we got to go work so that we can have the money to go to the grocery store, to buy the food, to buy the medicine, because conveniently they're at the grocery store. So we are operating inside of a system that we all really believe is what is real. So it is all tied together inside of a wicked web that has been woven for thousands of years. And all of this is part of our inability to really be comfortable with being alone so that we can enter into communion with that which will give us all of the answers that we're looking for. Why? All of the answers are inside. All we need is somebody that can speak truth. And like a tuning fork, we begin to vibrate inside. The truth begins to go, aha, that feels so good. And like a tuning fork, truth and truth begin to tune to one another. This is what resonance is all about. This is why we have to understand that we're energy. How many of you grew up knowing that you were energy? I didn't. That made no sense. Even though, energy, Einstein said that E equals mc squared. Energy equals the matter that we see. So I always knew that energy and matter were the same thing, but not this body. This body is special. I'm not energy. So much misinformation has been given to us. And when we don't understand that we're energy, we don't know how to tune ourselves to the higher frequencies because we're scared of being alone. And until we're comfortable being alone and come inside to be guided, this is why we have to understand the laws of God. And we're going to get more into the laws of God. Now we're seeing the insanity of the laws of man. When we allow ourselves to come inside and tune in to the truth, we feel the truth. And then what's outside that does not match it, we don't want to go to it. Now, we don't resist it like the ego resists truths. We just know it's not for us. And we put it down like we do a pair of shoes that has a hole. It's done, it's over with. We don't resist, oh my God, the shoe has a hole. What's going to happen to me? Like we put down the training wheels on a bicycle. We don't resist that we put that down. We're excited that we're going to go to something freer, a bicycle without training wheels. You can go a lot further and faster on a bicycle without training wheels. So inside of us is the truth that wants to be awakened, wants to be activated so that it can heal these bodies, so it can heal our minds, so it can enter us into the co-creative potential and community that we were designed to be in. We have the ability to be uplifting and supportive of one another. It is natural to us, but first we have to move through all the layers of what is natural, not natural, that have been programmed into our mind. As Jesus says, these strange and twisted laws. Next time, little exercise for the week, next time you're out and about, pay attention to the strange and twisted laws that you are abiding by. We've all been comfortable living with all the red tape, all the paperwork that we have to fill out for insurance. How did we get that way? I grew up again in the Dominican Republic, and if I hurt myself, because we all operated in the 3D world that, you break a bone, you go to the doctor. I didn't know at that time that I could just heal myself like Dr. Joe Dispenza learned he could do, and which is why he teaches that. We all teach what we learn, what we know is to be our truth. So we would just go to the doctor and we would pay, my grandmother would pay whatever, 5 peso, back then the pesos and the dollars were the same. And you just pay your $5 or whatever you needed to pay to get to the emergency room. You just go there and somebody sees you. None of this insanity of paperwork and validation and insurance. And do you qualify? Do you not qualify? You have a copay. Do you realize that if we didn't do any of that nonsense, we all could afford to go to the doctor and have a very fair exchange that would allow everybody to be so adequately taken care of? But you know why we can't do that? Because the mind that got conditioned in school to believe in separation got trained into believing that, well, you need a bigger house, you need a bigger car, you need the expensive one. You're a doctor, you don't drive a Honda, you drive a Mercedes. More expense, more expense, more expense. You're a doctor. You don't live in the, common people's neighborhood. You live in the gated community. More expense, more expense, more expense. You got to work those 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours a week to make the more money, make the more money, make the more money. All of those things desensitize us and make us so completely controllable. And what the world is going through right now is an awakening that is saying, hey, it doesn't resonate with my heart. You know what's so fascinating about the spiritual community that I've been associated with is that we know we create our own reality. So the mind knows it. We know that there's a self-awareness that we create our own reality, but we're resisting testing it out. You know how many people are scared to test out? Well, if I believe I create my own reality, God, let me create the reality of well-being. That's so scary. Why? Because to talk it and to walk it are two different things. You know what we need more than anything now is to begin to praise the people who are walking under no laws but God's. If people would begin to praise, good for you. I'm glad that you're taking that vaccine because that's what you believe is best for you. Good for you. If we said the same thing to those who are not taking the vaccine, good for you that you're believing something that is guiding you into that awareness. You see, somebody who's operating here are not going to be hearing that these laws are insane. They really truly believe that that sharpened, that pellet, round pellet in the fluid push to their veins with a sharpened needle is what will ward off disease. They can't go to God because they've been trained to go to the doctor, to go to the pill. They got to go outside of themselves. So compassion for these people who are too afraid to go inside. Why? Because they don't believe in self-worth. They don't believe they have God inside. Why? Because religion put God outside of us and gave us a middleman to get to it. Do you see how all these things are intertwined? I want to stop right here and see, does this make sense what I'm saying? And if it does make sense to you, tell me how so. Please unmute yourself, please. Yeah, of course, paperwork comes from Natalia, from all of that, the HIPAA laws, all of these laws designed to protect us are insane. Does what I'm saying make sense? Please unmute yourself. Yes, Crystal, please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
I can.
Well, one word comes to me. It's totally. Absolutely, totally. It all makes sense. That's been part of my journey for a while, is recognizing.
Actually, Crystal, wait, you're really faint. It's actually hard to hear you.
Okay. Let me change over and in the meantime deal with someone else who might want to say something.
Okay, does anybody else want to share your thoughts from what I'm saying? Does this make sense to you? I would love to hear from you. Does this make sense? And if it doesn't, I want to hear why it doesn't to you. And again, I'm not saying not to follow what the world has taught. I'm just saying be aware. Is it man's law or is it God's laws? Are they ego laws or are they God's laws? Yes, Kat. Then we'll go back to you, Crystal, after Kat.
I didn't even know okay. I do want to speak anyway. No, it makes complete sense to me. And the more awake I become, the more aware I become, the more I see it and I experience it. Even the thing of, wearing the masks is totally man's law. And this, so many things that are being pressed right now onto us, or laws that our current president is enacting, are limiting us so much, and we just can't buy into that. Because if we buy into that, we just surrender. So it's a time to walk the talk. It's time to get off your butt, as I've said, and do something to make a difference. That's how we've gotten here, because we just didn't. And myself totally included. I wasn't aware. I just accepted so many liberties and freedoms and beautiful things that the Constitution. I totally get this, what are the laws of the ego, although it's still tricky sometimes. But
it's tricky because it tricked us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, all these things we talk about are beliefs that are not of God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these things of the church, organized religion, the government. I mean, it's just insane. So, no, it totally resonates with me. Good. And it's so funny. You mentioned Facebook. This morning, I decided to get off Facebook totally. I'm just figuring out a way to save my pictures. I'm not going to be on Facebook at all. I'm dropped. I wasn't really on Twitter, but I'm on this. I'm just getting off of all of that crap, and hope that I can follow Telegram.
Yes, well, click the link that I posted in here at the very top of the chat group. Hold that link, or I can text it to you to get to the Telegram chat. So,
Okay. You know me.
What?
I don't see the link.
You got to go to the top of the chat. I'll text it to you, Kat. Don't worry. So
Okay.
here's a beautiful thing is that I won't close my Facebook account and I won't close my Twitter. I'm just going to let them be very, very basic, very neutral. I'm just not putting much on there because things are going to change and there are already platforms that are so well used. So I'm just going to leave the account dormant, or fairly inactive. But the time to take a stand is now. We have to take a stand, and because we have created money as the ruler, as the master. Right now, we primarily talk with our money. Who are we supporting financially? What are we doing? And that's just part of how we express our votes in many, many ways. Besides saying something, speaking, texting, emailing, calling, and marching and doing whatever your heart is called to participate in. I do not know what anything is for, so I don't know what anybody here has to do, but you will be guided if you go inside and ask God, what is mine to do? What is mine to say? What is mine to embody? So Crystal, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
There's so many truths that I resonate with all of what you said really is such in alignment with what I've been traveling with for quite some years. And, when I studied chiropractic in the 80s and then had to start registering with the authorities to be registered as a chiropractor in respective states or in or country, it was for the practitioner's good, to be registered. But what you realize afterwards is actually it's so that they can control you. And as you continue to function and they send you information, you feel the control. You mustn't do this, you mustn't do that. And then the same in the governmental organizations. We mentioned about the Constitution. There's that well-known saying, ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for the country. And that is actually being of service to the whole community. Well, how much can we give into the group as opposed to joining the group for the purpose of the group giving to us?
Mm-hmm.
I think that speaks to the whole process too, very much. And then you also mentioned about partnership, that you need to find your partner to make you whole. And at some stage I recognized that it's more about what can I give to the partnership, when I enter the partnership, to make it, because 1 + 1 is greater than 2 in a couple of two, and in a group of a country, when everybody's giving into the company or into the country, the power is so huge. Yeah. So, and that's the direction we're going in with hopefully that's the platform of 5D functioning is going to be a totally different ball game.
And what you said, not only thank you because you have shared your story in South Africa, the controlling of the chiropractors, also in the US, same thing.
Yes.
So that happens everywhere. That's why we have to register. That's why you have to get licenses, so they track you and know where you are. That's the whole point of birth certificates. Is a tracking mechanism that we all do it because everybody does it. But here's something that you said that was really beautiful, and I want to expand on it. The partnership part. When we learn that we have something to give, we stop being takers. And people who know that they have something to give have a high level of confidence, certainty. And inside of that confidence, you don't mind speaking up for what you know is accurate for yourself, not to accuse the other, but you stand up for yourself. Well, around the world, we have been so conditioned to not be powerful, to need somebody else to complete us, that our mind has this virus of dependence. We have become codependent, trained into, we need the doctor to be healed. We need the, the sharpened needles to ward off illness. We need the boss to give us a raise so we can make more money. We need the government to give us permission to own a weapon if we wanted to defend ourselves. The mind has been so conditioned into dependence that is what we have to do first. Self-awareness. We have to become aware of the power inside of us. And that's the journey of learning to love ourselves enough to move through all of the fears of owning our voice, reclaiming our voice. This is not something that is easy. This is a very difficult process. And this is why when you come to the places of self-awareness and awakening, when we straddle this line, the only way for us to fully awaken is to be compassionate with those that are not. This is where the distinction between one who is under no laws but God's is evident. Those who are under no laws but God's are standing firm with what they believe. They speak it no matter where they are. They're not afraid of what anybody thinks of their truth. They are not going to deny God. They're not going to deny their sovereignty, and they will do whatever it needs to be done to uphold the laws of God within themselves. And they want the same for everybody else. So to get to that place of confidence, you've got to move through the lack of it. And because that's how you see the contrast, and you can choose what ultimately resonates with our soul. But there are so many who have been made so fearful, so scared. So there's a lot of work to be done, Who else would like to share? Because I'd like to hear from you. We're not going to start a new paragraph because that we just won't have enough time to really do it justice. So we will stop after paragraph 3 and let that be where we pick up next week on paragraph 4.
I have something to share. It's kind of simple. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure can.
Oh, okay. Well, first I would just want to say thank you. Thank you for letting me share earlier on chat about the ego thing, because it just kind of nipped it in the bud. Sometimes that's helpful. Anyway, the other thing is, lately, the last couple days, wherever I go, I just don't bother putting on a mask, and nobody has said anything. And like I'll be going with Gerard or something. We'll go grab something. He goes, "Do you need a mask?" I'm like, "I'm good," and it just feels so good. And I know that's just, it's not like I made a decision. I just don't put it on. So, that's just feels like I'm doing God's law and not, anybody else's. And it's not like a fuck you or anything. It just feels good not to have a diaper on my face.
Well, and that's the thing, Jody. It is an absolute and total sense of peace that comes over us when we are following God's laws, not imposing it on anybody else. And here's the thing, what is good for us, we all willingly do. But when we're resisting something that we're being told is good for us, if we don't feel the goodness of it, we are clear it is not for us. And the inability to respect those who feel that, because I can assure you, and I am sure lots of people who hear this, maybe this will get banned by YouTube, which, by the way, I started another channel on Odyssey, which is made, for freedom of speech. So I will be posting my videos in Odyssey and YouTube, and I'll use the YouTube links for now. And whenever something gets taken down, then I'll use the Odyssey link. I'm still populating Odyssey. I got a lot of videos to move. I got over 100 videos on my channel. I've been sharing information for 15 freaking years. So I'm not going to move all of that. Probably maybe there's 50 videos that I'll move. So you'll soon be getting, I don't know when, links to my videos. They'll take you to Odyssey and not YouTube. Don't think it's something I got hacked. no, I am moving things to Odyssey because, again, I'm under no laws but God's. And I'm going to find the humans that are operating at a level of integrity that allow for freedom of speech, which is why it's the first thing that is our founding fathers knew 200 plus years ago, 250 years ago. Our founding fathers knew the game of control. It starts with controlling speech. And then it starts with taking away your arms. So if you can't defend it, if you can't speak it and you can't defend it, you're fucked, because now they have total control over you. So they understand the game. They understood the game back then. And those who understand what's happening now are doing everything they can to allow for freedom of speech. Because if you feel like you can't, what you have to say, nobody's listening to it, why bother speaking? You're one of the ones who are easily going to be marched to that place where they want us. And we were not designed to suppress. We were designed to express the love and light of God. But you cannot know it for yourself if you don't honor that for everybody else. That is why nobody who is against the masks is creating a law that says everybody has to go unmasked. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that, because when you know freedom, you don't force it on somebody else. Only those who want the mask are trying to control those who don't want it. But those who don't want it are not trying to say, you should go unmasked. If you're afraid, who cares? And that's the insanity. That's how you really see the insanity.
And I also played a little game when I went into this one, I think it was Panera or something. I didn't have a mask and there was a line and everybody was masked. Well, everybody's under the illusion that once you get the vaccine, you're safe, but yet they're being told to still wear a mask. So because there was a line at this one place, I said, well, I'm fully vaccinated to bust their bubble. Isn't that all? Oh my God. I think Gerard just kind of like backed off. He was so embarrassed. But it's just, they have to then question, well, wait a minute, she's not wearing a mask, but she's fully oh, wait a minute, maybe these vaccines aren't. That was me being obnoxious, and it was fun.
Well, you can tell them you're fully vaccinated by God.
Oh, I like that. I love it.
Oh, the truth vaccine. Oh my goodness, Jody, you're too funny. All right, who else would like to share? And then we'll wrap up our day. Hey, John.
Yeah, hi. I'm curious, obviously without any detail, but how do you help hundreds of thousands, millions of people have channels or are able to operate in and not, drive all over each other, or without some kinds of sets of rules, laws, whatever you want to call it. I mean, how I believe what we're studying, and I think that's that's a self-seeking journey. But as you've pointed out, there are so many hundreds of thousands, millions of people. So how, if you didn't have a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit and lines on the road or where you're supposed to drive, how would you organize it? How would
it's really simple, and that's a really good question, because that's one of the first questions that as we're beginning to wake up, that mind that's used to rules and laws goes, well, wait a second, how do we do it? And it's very, very easy. The rules, the regulations that are equal for everybody and are designed not to punish, that are designed for safety, those are all wonderful. The lines in the middle of the road, it makes perfect sense, because naturally we want to be safe. We want to be, the body has, the egoic mind is designed for safety, for survival. So when we come up with agreements that are equal for everybody, yes, so equal, if you go pass the speed limit, you get a ticket and you get a ticket, Mr. Governor. You can't get out of it if just because you're the governor. When the rules are the same and we have transparency, it's easy to abide by guidances that keep everybody safe. I'm going to read this again. The strange and twisted laws, those are the ones that we have to acknowledge. And those typically are found inside of the what is good for the geese is not good for the gander, or good for the goose, not whatever the saying is. The laws that have double standard, the regulations that favor one over the other, those are sick and twisted laws. The laws that talk us out of doing what is natural for us to be in sovereign safety. So there is a set of regulations that we would all easily abide by if we all operated with the same laws of God, that we were created for life, liberty, and happiness first. If we honor that, then we don't have these strange and twisted laws that are designed to take liberty, that are designed to not honor life and all suppress happiness. So there is a sifting the wheat from the chaff that has to happen. And we will all be more than happy to abide by regulations that are good for all. So we've had them. We've operated with many really good things for a very long time. And then they got more complicated. And once it gets more complicated, you're lost inside of the red tape of what's good for one and not for the other. But that's a very good question. We all have to go through that question. It's not about creating chaos. This is about, look at nature. Nature operates with a set of guidelines that is innate in an honoring that happens in nature. And it, no being in nature is creating red tape and making it difficult for another being to do its thing.
Yeah, you wouldn't tell lions they need a license to hunt gazelles. I know what you're saying.
Exactly. It's done. What is done is done.
That's not much comfort if you're a gazelle.
But if you understand God's laws, the gazelles chose to come in and be a gazelle to have the experience of being hunted by a lion. Well, wonder from a place of non-physical, this is a playground. I wonder what that experience is going to be like. Like I said last week, we go to the horror, the haunted houses to get terrorized. Well, the gazelle just came to planet Earth as the haunted house to get terrorized by the lion. So we pay for that in the haunted house. The gazelle isn't paying for it. Let's just say it paid for it with its, but it wanted to have that experience. And when we trust that innate knowingness that is inside of us, it's amazing. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't get any clearer than that. So, all right. What doesn't everybody unmute yourself and let's say goodbye and have a beautiful day, and keep Vern in your prayers, and anybody else that needs healing. Namaste. Let's keep each other in our prayers for well-being, because if you believe it, it happens. All right. Love you all.
Have a great day.
Love you all. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in Telegram. See you in Telegram. See you.
Love you all. Thank you.
Invite your friends to Telegram. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I have to figure that one out.
It's simple.
Okay.